very good evening to everyone.
Good evening,
and good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
So
sir.
we are indeed honored to have you here with
My
us
pleasure.
today. Over 4 decades of experience in the insurance industry. It's something extraordinary. So can you just brief us a little about you working with the Cholamandalam and you working with the Lloyd's India?
Before I come to really start talking about my experiences with Cholamandalam and Lloyd's, I want to latch on to the word that you mentioned, extraordinary. What is extraordinary? And that's something I learned later in my life. We are all aware of the word ordinary,
Yes.
and when you extraordinary, that extraordinary. So that's exactly what I learned. There's nothing different about it. It's just that your ordinariness is taken to a length where it becomes slight virtue. So that's one learning that I've had. Coming to your question on the Cholamandalam and Lloyd's bit, Cholamandalam experience came to my lap after I had done the stint with AIG and Tata AIG in India. That essentially I was working with a public sector organization called GIC and Oriental Insurance for more than 20 years. And when the fresh whip of opening of the sector started in 1999, I was probably one of the first few to have jumped the boat, and I joined the AIG, which is the American International Organization. And then later we went with the joint venture with Tata Group, and that's how we set up the company called Tata AIG. We set up two companies actually, Tata AIG General and Tata AIG Life. Whilst I was actually working there, I got an offer from the Murugappa Group, and because they had their financial outfit called Cholamandalam Financial Investment Company, and they had just floated a company called Cholamandalam General Insurance, and they wanted somebody with an insurance background to come and head those operations. So they asked me to come over to Chennai, and I remember the last word that my chairman in Tata AIG had for me, Farooq Kavrana. He was the chairman of Tata AIG. He was also one of the members on the Tata Sons, which is a controlling body for Tata Group, And he said to me that, Arun, you're going from Tatas of India to Tatas of South, So he was very happy, and when I landed there, I took over the operations. Initially, we didn't have the joint venture partner. Later on, we started talking to Mrs. Sumitomo of Japan, and that's how the name. And when we finished the joint venture discussions, and when every formality and regulatory approval was obtained, the name of the company was changed from Chola General Insurance Company to Chola MS General Insurance Company. Now, few of the things that we started doing, in Chola was that though we are going to be a startup company, we shall not behave as a startup company, in the sense that the kind of experience that we had collected in terms of the business heads, in terms of the underwriting abilities, in terms of claims abilities, etc., we had years and years, centuries of experience with us, So we said, if with this kind of experience behind us, with the kind of capital support from both Murugappa and Mrs. Sumitomo of Japan, we said, let's start full-scale operations, and we will sell all kinds of products. And we started with 6-7 branches across the country and started selling commercial insurances, retail insurances, and so on and so forth. So it was a story which was very clearly steeped in culture, in sound management practices, in sound underwriting practices, in sound claims management practices. We were the first to have announced very clearly to the market that I'm not really going to mix up the underwriting with claims. What generally used to happen, that same set of people would do both underwriting and claims management together. We said no, there'll be separate teams doing underwriting and there'll be separate doing claims, so that you don't bargain a claim for more business. So a claim has to be dealt with on its own merit. So that was number one. Realization that a new thing that we started with. Second, we said that we had to find out a relationship of trust and relationship of respect with Japanese team, And Japanese team was very smart team. They were part of the, Missy Sumitomo culture. And Missy Sumitomo means that they were part of the entire Japanese enterprise, which was extremely outward looking. And they were all over the world, They were just not in India, they were all over the world. So they brought to the table a very different culture. In one of the culture they brought to the table is that you shall work with total professional commitment. You shall work within the bounds of the legislative legal processes, You shall work within the bounds of the regulatory restraints, So we don't want you to do anything in the name of business to cross the red line and do something which both the managements do not approve of, As a matter of good managerial practice, so they had said very clearly that when we were actually constituting the board, it was very clear that there were few members on their side on the board, and there were few members from Mudugappa side on the board, and as far as the chief executive was concerned, that was to be a neutral person, But we used to have a joint meetings with both the management teams of Mrs. Sumitomo and the Mudugappa group to ensure that anything which is brought to the board meeting, any proposal which was to generate some kind of debate, we should settle that outside of the board and then bring in a fresh perspective to the board meeting, so that it really goes through very smoothly, And in 4 years time that I was there, we were successful in branching of the operations to a number of locations, number of products, number of from zero claim to thousands of claims that started pouring in, and we were able to manage and scale up the operations due to the robust IT system that we had, due to the robust operations team that we had collected, and of course the business backup both from the underwriting as well as from the claim side. Yes. So that's been my experience as far as Chola MS General Insurance is concerned. My Lloyd's experience has been a very different kind of experience. I'm one of those very fortunate persons in my life as an insurance professional, that with AIG I worked with Americans, with Chola MS I worked with Japanese, and here I was working with Brits, And Brits also absolutely thorough blue-blooded Brits, and if you really know the journey of Lloyd's of London, Lloyd's of London have been around for more than 330 years. 1688 was a time when they actually got their birth in a coffee house named Lloyd's in London, and that's how they started their journey. Now, if you really try and reflect any organization which is more than 300 years old, one of the things you'll find that if you have to sustain yourself, through this length of time, that means you have to have regular metamorphosis going on, regular change, regular understanding, regular adjustments, and that's what I really saw when I was working with Lloyd's of London. I mean, every crisis that came to them, it changed them for a better entity, So that's something that I learned, and I try to apply to my individual human experiences also, saying that any crisis must become an opportunity. Any crisis should, rather than take you down, should actually take you up, So here was a very different set of experience, because Lloyd's of London had been dealing with the insurance market in India for more than 100 years, 200 years, and they were essentially doing the reinsurance operations, Now, with the Indian economy actually is having to start booming, and then India becoming a very important member of the international community along with China and US, I remember, I'll come back to this story a little later, but I'll tell you the vision of my chairman, John Nelson, with whom I really worked with. And John told me once very clearly, he says, Arun, you remember, do you know when we were there in America, it was early 1900 that we started doing our operations, it took us 100 years to reach us where we have reached. I don't mind, repeating the same length of time, but ensure that when I am fully working in India, I have a reputation, I have an understanding of the market, and we are always perceived as foreign looking. So that was a great learning, and what you call as humility, and what you call as the professionalism is what I learned from John personally. I remember, you remember, do you know this 11th of November every day is a day of armistice, in London, and Lloyd's is one of the very prominent member of that. And we have the war veterans of World War II actually who come to Lloyd's London, and they form, they do the formation, and they do the music and all that. And one armistice day, I happened to be in 2014, I happened to be in London sitting with John. He took me down. And next day, in fact, not next day, the same day in the afternoon, we had a session in which we were doing a seminar for India, for all the Indians and for all for the businesses who had links with India relating to insurance. And we were having a joint UK-India business partnership meet in which John Nelson had to give a special address. Well, he wrote the address down, he dictated the address to his secretary, and then when the print came, and you know what, in the room only me and John were sitting, and John said, Arun, I'm now reading out this address, and please correct me wherever you think I'm going wrong, and he's chairman of Lloyd's, mind you. And he's saying, Arun, please correct me wherever you think I'm not doing right. If a word is not correct, is not being put correctly, or is not being conveyed correctly, please change it. And so that's how I learned one lesson in life, that whatever you are in your life, don't stop learning. Learning never stops, even if you happen to be happen to be chairman of Lloyd's of London. Your learning never stops. And the same kind of thing, when I was as part of India UK business team, I was talking to the political setup back in UK. I found the same thing with the then government headed by David Cameron. He was a UK Prime Minister, and I had the same feeling that, look, one day I remember David Cameron had taken a team of almost 103 business executives to India, and when they were having a wash-up session in Delhi, and I was asked to join the wash-up session. So there was a minister who addresses the conference, says, look, tell me exactly what you did in the last 2 days, and what is it that I, as a Minister of Environment, I, as a Minister of Industry, have to do something to ensure that your business flourishes in India. So these are the learnings that I had with both Chola and Lloyd, and I'm very happy to have shared with you.
So we also understand that you have 43 years of experience in the insurance domain, and so we would like to ask you how the whole experience was from your perspective. What are the changes that you foresee from here? How do you bring about, what do you see this industry to become, and how it was earlier?
How it was, and what are the changes that you saw, and what are the changes that you are wishing to see?
Well, when I had joined the industry, general insurance industry, in 1977, I was part of the first batch of apprentice officers, which were actually selected from all India basis through an all India exam, and we were the first batch after the nationalization was done in 1972, which really got completed in 1973. And before that, we had 107 private companies, and they all got merged into one company, General Insurance, GIC, RE, and GIC, not RE, GIC, General Insurance Corporation of India. And GIC had 4 subsidiary companies, United, Oriental, New India, National. Yes. So first there was a change of culture from private industry to a monopoly of public sector, organization, or umbrella organization, as we call it, of GIC, And it took time before the entire monopoly got working, and that was a time also in the Indian society and the Indian economy where the socialistic kind of thinking was actually ruling the roost. If you remember, LIC was nationalized in 1956, banks were nationalized in 1969, 72 was the nationalization of the insurance companies, 1956 was the time when the then Prime Minister of the country decided to have a socialistic kind of industrial pattern, and that's how even an iconic Air India was actually was converted into a government company back in 1953. So that was an era of socialization, era of public sector, and they were being brought in by a philosophy saying that, look, we want to have a commanding scale of economy. And then the political philosophy was that if you really want to have quick growth in the market, at least those sectors which can provide the stability and the strength to the entire economy, they must be allowed to dominate, and that's how the public sector organizations actually were asked to come in. It took time before they took roots. And one of the decisions of the government was that, unlike LIC, which was a complete monopoly, when they repeated the experience in 1972-73, they said that we will not have one single monopoly like LIC. We'll have four companies under one umbrella organization called General Insurance Corporation of India. And the idea was that at least among these four companies, let there be competition. And when they decided to have competition, they said that we'll have competition not based on the pricing, but we'll have competition based on the servicing. So that was the element. But very soon, the economy started firing. It became international in character. When it became international in character, very well, it is as far as most of the developed countries are concerned, they are being run by the private enterprise.
Yes.
And that's number one. Number two, in any case, the reinsurance of the insurance was being done by the private companies outside of India, whether it's London market or European market or American market, and most of those markets actually were run by the private enterprise. And third factor also came into play, that the kind of competition that you talked about, or they started with saying that you will have competition in the services. Now the public started complaining that when you don't have competition in pricing, then where's the competition? What's this competition you're really talking about? And so a time came in the Indian market. If you remember, Malhotra committee was in 1991 when we ran out of foreign exchange. Dr. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister. He started opening up the market, and one of the things that really happened along with opening up the market was the institutionalizing a Malhotra committee, which will actually look into the opening of the insurance sector. Imagine it had started in 72-73, and very soon, there were steps being taken by the government that let's start opening up the insurance sector. And the process, which started in 1994 with the formation of the Malhotra committee, which got completed in 1999. In 1999 December bill, they said that we'll open up the insurance sector, we'll allow insurance companies to come in and reinsurance companies to come in. But then they said very clearly that we will not allow them to come in with free access. They'll have to have joint venture with a local partner, and their share of FDI will not go beyond 26%. That's how they really started with. So the part of the answer that I wanted to give it to you was that from a freewheeling economy where we had 107 companies, where they felt that there was too much of competition, you came to a monopoly situation where you felt that, look, there has to be competition only in servicing rather than pricing. Then the needle moves to a very new situation where saying we want a genuine competition. And then from 2000 onwards, the IRD had already come in. Before that, we had Commissioner of Insurance, and then IRD came into being. We had the first chairman of IRD, Mr. Rangacharya, who actually worked round the clock, ensuring that most of the regulations were out in time, and they gave, and the very idea of the regulatory regime was for the first time. And I'll explain to you how the regulatory regime worked, the difference. Earlier, you have the laws being passed by the Parliament of India. So that's the primary legislation. Now, what happened for the first time in India, that the primary law of the country gave powers to the regulatory regulator, insurance regulator in India, and within the bounds of the primary law, it gave powers to the regulator, saying that most of the regulations that within the framework, you can start issuing regulations from your side. So, because Parliament is kind of remote, we can't really keep on changing the laws every now and then. So, a lot of these areas that you can change yourself were given out to the regulator, and that's how most of the regulations actually came into play. Along with most of the companies, even the private companies that started coming in. If you have noticed, the brokers were not allowed to work in India. We had reinsurance brokers. We didn't have the brokers on the direct side. Brokers on the direct side came into play only in 2002, 2003. Through the regulatory process. So now the needle was moving to a situation where the regulator, an independent regulator, was there in flesh and blood. And the job of the Indian regulator was to ensure that there is a level playing field offered to all the players of all kinds of ilk, where you have private companies, you have a public sector companies, you have joint venture companies, the regulator actually will allow these players to have a level playing field, So that was a big change that happened, in the Indian market, And soon, soon it was realized that the big reinsurance companies of the world, the Munich Re's of the world, the Swiss Re's of the world, Lloyd's of London, etc., they said, if I have to bring the entire capital and entire expertise of Swiss or Munich or Lloyd's, I can't really encapsule myself into this 200 crore capital base that you're asking me to do. So they said, we have to bring the entire balance sheet on the table to the Indian market, and that's how the concept of branch office actually came through, And it was allowed for the first time in 2015, modification of the Insurance Act that happened, modification of 1938 Act that happened in 2015, March 12, passage of the insurance legislation in the Parliament. So if you really trace the journey of the insurance and reinsurance sector, it has travelled through different milestones. Now, what are the expectations and what are my expectations? My expectations are very clearly laid out on the table. All of you have to become thorough professionals, and the only way in which you can become, and when I say thorough professional, you should have the ability to be able to work within India and outside India and be seen as a thorough professional. I mean, if you want to work here, fair enough. If you want to work outside, fair enough. The Indian market, the regulations and market practices must be taken on par with the global best. That's my expectations. And that's exactly what I'm really working at. And towards this particular goal, I have partnered with a gentleman called Mr. H. Ansari, who was one of the former members of the IRDA. We've written a number of monographs. The last monograph that came out was in December 2019, which talked about the fact that we really have to work for the insurance governance, which is on par with the very best in the global arena, and that exactly is the end towards which I'm working.
Yes, sir. One more question, sir, a follow-up question. What, according to you, is the current governance and the regulations? What do you think of the current governance and the regulations in the insurance industry currently, sir?
Well, one thing I have noticed is that I'll give you one specific example to drive home the point. Now, when you say you ought to be having a level playing field, but homegrown reinsurance company, GIC Re, and if you say that you have to have compulsory cession That means a certain part of your business you have to seed compulsorily with the Indian reinsurer. Now, and then so if you have, let's assume if you have 10 players in the market, and 2 players in the market are having profitable business and some other players are not having profitable business, but if you allow the same level of commission, that means you're not generating a level playing field. It's a monopoly of sorts which is still happening. So I am saying to the policy makers in India that when you talk of level playing field, let it be a genuine level playing field. Of course, if your entities work in London, if your entities work in US, and if they are subjected to some discrimination, you have every reason to voice those concerns. But when you allow genuine competition within the Indian market, you'll allow the best of technology to come in, best of investments to come in, because that's what we need. We need the best of technology, we need the best of management practices, we need the best of experiences to really, and all the investments to come in, because you need technology and investment in every single field, whether in education, whether in health, whether in financial services, whether in energy companies, any setup and every setup. You need the best to actually come to the Indian market, and also allow your exports to happen all over the world. So it is this genuine competition that I wanna see flourish in the Indian market. That's one of my objectives,
Great. So we would also like to conclude this session. So your experience has taught us a lot. We learned so much. We learned so many new things today.
Yes.
In a span of 15-20 minutes. We could learn a lot, and it speaks volumes about you also, sir, as a person.
And your experience just gives us motivates us or inspires us to
yes.
being
To do
in.
better.
We are just
Trust me,
starting.
I wish to remain a student also all my life, and I learn probably
Yes.
more than what you're learning from me,
Yes.
because when I look at you, I look at freshness,
Yes.
I look at hope, and that's what we must exude, we must exude happiness and we must exude hope. That's very important.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
for joining with us.
Wish
today.
you all the very best.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
It was